Welcome back to English Bridge. I'm glad you're here with me today because we're going to explore a story about truth, family, and the quiet power of standing in your own light. The story is called Roots of Glass, and as you listen, I invite you to notice not only what happens, but how the language feels when we talk about dignity, boundaries, and forgiveness. You'll hear the rhythm of reflective storytelling where pauses matter and simple words carry a lot of meaning. And you'll learn expressions that help you speak about strength without shouting, and healing without pretending the past was kind. Before we begin, a quick language warm up. Three ideas to keep in mind. First, vocabulary for composure. Phrases like quiet courage, to stand in the light, to hold your ground, and let the truth walk on its own. These expressions are useful when you want to sound calm but confident. Second, rhythm and emphasis. When you hear me pause, imagine a comma, a breath, or a soft period. Good spoken English often uses shorter sentences to carry heavier emotions. Third, metaphor and meaning. When I say roots are glass, I'm talking about more than plants or windows. Roots are the people and places we grow from. Glass is beauty and fragility. When something breaks, it doesn't always make a sound you can hear. Sometimes you see the crack, only when the light hits it just right. Take a breath, settle into your seat. This is Roots of Glass. I told myself I was ready to return to that room. I told myself that after 10 years of silence, I could walk into the same house where my name had been erased and I would not shake. I believed that success would be my armor and time my shield. But the truth is, some ghosts wear perfume and pearls, and the past can still find the corners of your chest where you hide your breath. My name is Tom. Some people know me as the CEO of Vital Path Technologies, the company we built from nothing but ideas, coffee, and nights that didn't end until the sky changed color. Some people know me as a mother or as a wife to a man who believes in my mind like it's the sun. And some people, the ones in that room, used to know me as a problem to be managed, a shadow to be moved out of the picture so the world would admire their careful composition. We arrived at the oceanfront estate just before the speeches. Adam squeezed my hand and said, "Breathe. You earned your place here." He always says it like a fact, not a comfort. That's what I love about him. Lucy slipped her small fingers into mine and asked if there would be cake, because 7-year-olds understand priorities better than most adults. When we stepped inside, I could feel the wealth in the air, polished and polite. It sounded like crystal and careful laughter. It smelled like white flowers and money. And then I saw her, Emma, my sister, the bride. Our eyes met. Her smile held its shape the way glass does just before it breaks. I felt the first crack of memory, the one that runs under the surface of a calm voice. 10 years since the night I left with a suitcase, and a promise to myself that I would not return until I belonged to my own life. 10 years since I heard my father say, "If you won't be grateful for the path we set, then you won't walk it at all." 10 years since I learned that my college fund had paid for my sister's dreams, and my dreams were supposed to be quiet. Here is a short English reflection. When you want to talk about pain without sounding angry, try using steady verbs and simple sentences. I left. I worked. I learned. I survived. The power comes from the facts, not the fireworks. Back to the room. My mother looked like she had swallowed salt. My father moved the way he always had when he wanted to control the weather. But the groom, Liam, did something different. He walked straight toward me with a light in his face that was made of curiosity, not fear. He said, "You're Nora Hayes, right? From Vital Path? We've been trying to partner with your company. Your post-operative monitoring system is changing our readmission rates." In that moment, the whispers began. They always spread faster than truth, but sometimes they carry truth like a current. I didn't look at my parents when those words reached their ears. I didn't need to. I could feel the temperature of the room shift by a few degrees. I want to teach you a phrase: to hold your ground. It means to stand where you are and not get pushed back by pressure. You can say, "I held my ground." It's calm. It's strong. It sounds like me in that room. Emma moved toward us, her smile stretched thin. She said she was happy I could make it. She said she had always hoped I would find a way to come back. She said these things with the rhythm of someone who had practiced them in a mirror. Then, someone asked her a question about a lab protocol, an ordinary question for someone who says she works in a clinic and uses words like evidence and trial and outcomes. She stumbled. It was the smallest hesitation, the kind you might miss if you weren't listening for air. But Liam heard it. I saw his arm slide a little away from her waist, just a little, like a thread pulling loose. When your voice is shaking, English gives you a tool. Shorten your sentences, put space between your thoughts. The pauses will carry you across the bridge of your fear. You can say, "I'm here. I'm safe. I know my truth." Listen to the way your mouth moves around those words. They are simple. They are strong. My father found his courage in anger and told me I was ruining the night. I said I was invited. Perhaps you should ask yourself why my presence is a problem. My mother said I had always wanted attention. I said, "Not from you." That exchange lasted 10 seconds, but it took 10 years to prepare for it. That is another phrase to keep: quiet preparation. It means all the work you do that nobody sees until it suddenly becomes obvious you did it. In the restroom, Emma asked me why I had come. She said I was breaking what she had built. I said I was simply standing in a room, and the room was reacting to the truth inside it. She said I was supposed to stay gone. I said I tried, but success has a way of sending out light, and light, like truth, finds the places it was kept from. She said she was sorry. Her voice cracked on the second word. I believed her for half a second, and then I remembered the photo of her smiling in a cap and gown I helped to pay for. I remembered the night I ate ramen and studied and hoped and cried into a towel so I wouldn't wake my friend on the couch across from me. I remembered every small dignity I kept when nobody offered me a larger one. Let's pause for an English bridge moment. When you want to express boundaries without hostility, try beginning with I statements. "I don't accept that. I'm not available for this conversation. I hear you, and here is my decision." These are not aggressive. They are clear. Clarity is a kindness you can give yourself when others won't give it to you. Back in the ballroom, a physician asked me about our algorithm. I explained how we trained it on a diverse set of recovery patterns, so it would stop mistaking noisy data for danger and real danger for noise. I said that in medicine, as in family, the worst errors happen when you ignore quiet signals. I could feel eyes on me that used to look past me. I didn't take pleasure in that. I took breath. Lucy tugged my hand and asked, "Are they our family?" I said, "They are our relatives. Family is the people you can rest your heart with." She nodded, like she understood more than I had said. Children often do. I thanked my parents. I said, "Thank you for not giving me a chance. You made me build my own." The room held its breath. You might think that was cruel. It wasn't. It was the truth said, gently, with nothing extra. In English, this is called plain speech. It is not rude, it is clear. When you need to say hard things, plain speech gives you a floor to stand on. I left early, not as an escape, but as a decision. Last time I left that house, it was raining. This time, I left with a light inside me that did not ask permission to stay on. Adam walked beside me like he always does. Not in front of me, not behind me, but beside me. Lucy skipped down the steps and said, "Cake later, right?" And I said, "Always, because hope should taste sweet when you can make it." Here is a deeper reflection on language. The sentence I left early carries more quiet power than I escaped or I ran away. Left early says you were in control of your time. It is not a dramatic verb. It is a decisive one. When you want to show agency, choose verbs that place you as the subject of your actions. A month later, the investigation became public. Not because of me, because the truth, when kept in a dark place for too long, grows restless and begins to move. There were questions about billing, about codes, about patterns that didn't make sense unless you already wanted them to. Liam came to my office. He said he was sorry for believing what was easiest to believe. He asked if I would testify. I said no. I told him I would send the records I had from the year I worked the reception desk, and that would be enough. The truth does not require my performance. It only asks that I do not block its path. He said he didn't know how to forgive himself for not seeing sooner. I said that guilt is a poor architect. It builds structures that look like accountability from a distance, but from up close, they are just cages. I said the better question is, what will you do now that you know? He said he would cooperate. He said he would start over. He said starting over felt like failure. I said starting over is a skill, not a sentence. If you want to practice English with feeling, try this sentence. Starting over is a skill. Say it softly, say it again. Each time, notice how your mouth relaxes around the sounds. Skill is a short word, but it often requires the most patience. A letter arrived from Emma 2 months after the wedding. It was written in neat lines, carefully, like she was trying to keep her voice from shaking. She said she had believed for too long that my light would dim hers, that our parents fed that belief because it served their narrative, and that she was sorry, truly sorry, for the ways she helped to raise me. She did not ask for forgiveness. She asked for a chance to stop being the person she had been. I appreciated the grammar of that sentence. She didn't say she wanted to become a new person. She said she wanted to stop being the old one. In English, the difference is small on paper and enormous in practice. I wrote back. I did not write a letter of absolution. I wrote an invitation to apply for an internship at VitalPath. I didn't offer a position. I offered a door. That is another expression I want you to remember. To offer a door. It means to present an opportunity without promising the walkthrough. It will be easy or guaranteed. It is generous. It is honest. Before the next part of the story, let's step into a language lesson. 3 phrases with soft strength. To make room. I'm making room for my future means I am intentionally creating space by moving old things out of the way. To name what is true. When you name what is true, you stop negotiating with confusion. You say the thing that keeps trying to be heard. To lay something down. I'm laying this burden down means I am choosing to stop carrying what doesn't belong to me anymore. Okay, back to the life part. 6 months after the wedding, I stood in front of a conference audience and talked about compassionate technology. I told them that machines do not heal people. People heal people. Machines help us notice. They give us data, and sometimes they even give us time. But meaning still lives in the space between one person and another. When I said that, I saw someone at the back of the room lift her chin as if she had remembered her own name. It was Emma. She wasn't wearing the uniform of a bride. She was wearing the uniform of a learner. Scrubs. A badge that said trainee. She listened without looking away. When the talk ended, she didn't come to the stage. She didn't need to. We had already had the only conversation that mattered, and it did not require words. People like to imagine forgiveness as a single bright moment. Sometimes it is not a moment. Sometimes it is a slow permission you give yourself to live well, even if the apology never arrives, or arrives late, or arrives imperfect. I did not forgive my parents. I did not write them a letter. I did not tear up the past or make it smaller. I placed it where it belonged, which is behind me and not on my shoulders. Let's do another small language practice. If you want to speak gently about the past without excusing it, try these frames. I can understand and still say no. I can remember and still move on. I can learn from it without living in it. Each sentence holds two ideas. English often balances truth best when you allow two things to be true at the same time. At home, the garden became our classroom. Lucy asked if plants need space to grow. I told her some do, or their roots tangle and they fight quietly for water they would gladly share if they had room. She asked if people are like that. I said yes, but the difference is that people can move. We can choose a new pot, a new patch of ground, a new hill to face the sun from. We can plant ourselves again. I think about the early days of Vital Path sometimes, not with nostalgia, but with gratitude that we were foolish enough to try. We made charts with markers on the backs of envelopes. We learned how to explain complicated things in simple words because no one would give us money for complicated words. We diagrammed hospital hallways on napkins. We failed politely and often. We apologized and improved. We kept the parts of the plan that worked and we threw away the parts that looked good in a pitch, but didn't help people in beds with fear in their eyes. If you want a phrase for that process, call it honest iteration. It's how stories and companies and lives get better. One evening, after Lucy was asleep and Adam was reading on the couch, I opened an old email I had written to myself the night I left home. It said, "You are not a disappointment. You are a mismatch. Find your match." I smiled at that younger voice. She did not know what would happen. She only knew what could not keep happening. That was enough. Here is a teaching moment about the difference between apology and responsibility. In English, I'm sorry can be a reflex. Responsibility sounds like this. I did this. It caused harm. Here is how I will repair what I can, and here is how I will prevent it from happening again. When you speak about the past, try to use verbs that show ownership. They are not heavier than apologies. They are simply more useful. At home, the garden became our classroom. Lucy asked if plants need space to grow. I told her some do, or their roots tangle and they fight quietly for water they would gladly share if they had room. She asked if people are like that. I said yes, but the difference is that people can move. We can choose a new pot, a new patch of ground, a new hill to face the sun from. We can plant ourselves again. I think about the early days of Vital Path sometimes, not with nostalgia, but with gratitude that we were foolish enough to try. We made charts with markers on the backs of envelopes. We learned how to explain complicated things in simple words because no one would give us money for complicated words. We diagrammed hospital hallways on napkins. We failed politely and often. We apologized and improved. We kept the parts of the plan that worked and we threw away the parts that looked good in a pitch, but didn't help people in beds with fear in their eyes. If you want a phrase for that process, call it honest iteration. It's how stories and companies and lives get better. One evening, after Lucy was asleep and Adam was reading on the couch, I opened an old email I had written to myself the night I left home. It said, "You are not a disappointment. You are a mismatch. Find your match." I smiled at that younger voice. She did not know what would happen. She only knew what could not keep happening. That was enough. Here is a teaching moment about the difference between apology and responsibility. In English, I'm sorry can be a reflex. Responsibility sounds like this: I did this. It caused harm. Here is how I will repair what I can, and here is how I will prevent it from happening again. When you speak about the past, try to use verbs that show ownership. They are not heavier than apologies. They are simply more useful. I also started speaking to younger founders about ethics, not because I was perfect, but because I remembered the temptation to grow faster than your conscience. I said this sentence a lot: scale your integrity with your product. If you don't, the roof will collapse on the wrong day. In English, metaphors can teach in ways rules cannot. Roofs and roots and rivers are all ways to talk about time and truth without sounding like you are lecturing. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine a conversation with the girl I used to be, the one with the wet suitcase and the shaking hands. I tell her three things. First, you are not dramatic. You are honest. Second, you do not have to win to be worthy. Third, one day you will stand in a room where they once made you small, and you will not need to defend yourself because you will not be on trial anymore. I'll pause to give you a language exercise. Finish these sentences in your own words. I used to believe that. Now I understand that. I am choosing to keep your answers simple, present tense if you can. Present tense reinforces agency. It places you inside your life, not at a distance from it. On Lucy's 8th birthday, Emma sent a small gift. It was a set of watercolor paints and a note that said, "I'm trying to paint what is real." Lucy opened it and asked if we could all paint together on the porch. We did. We made messy flowers and a crooked sun and a house with too many windows. Lucy said the windows were for the light to come in and for the light to go out. That sounded like a family I could live in. People ask me sometimes if I will ever reconcile with my parents. I say we are not puzzle pieces that failed to fit. We are shapes that were cut by different hands. I wish them enough peace to stop cutting others into their image. I wish myself a life where my shape does not need their approval to be complete. There is a phrase for that kind of boundary: humane distance. It means you do not need to hate to be free. You can refuse and be gentle at the same time. Another English tip before we close. When you tell stories of survival in professional or public settings, it can help to move from first person singular to first person plural when you talk about solutions. I did the work. We built the team. We delivered the result. This shift invites others into your resilience. It turns your strength into a bridge. One afternoon in late spring, Lucy and I planted new seedlings. She said, "These need more space, right?" I said yes, and she asked how much. I told her to imagine the leaves at full size, then give them just a little more room than that. People need the same. We grow into the space we allow ourselves, and then we need a little more. That little more is where future breathes. If you have stayed with me this far, thank you. You have listened to a story about a woman who returned to the scene of her unmaking and stood there without asking for permission to exist. You have learned phrases that can hold you steady in your own rooms, full of old echoes. You know now that leaving early can be a strong verb, that offering a door can be an act of love, that healing is a practice, not a performance. To finish, I want to give you a short collection of phrases to practice out loud. Say them slowly. Let them find the shape of your mouth. Let them live there. I stand in the light. The quietest revenge is success. I will not argue with truth. I am building roots that belong to me. I'm laying down what I don't need to carry. I can understand and still say no. Starting over is a skill. I left early because I chose peace. I offer a door, not a guarantee. I belong to my own life. Now write for a few minutes if you can. Start with a sentence. The moment I stopped explaining myself was the moment I became free. Let the next lines arrive without forcing them. Keep them simple, specific, and yours. And when you are ready to stand in your room with your history at your back and your future in your hands, remember that you do not need to be louder than the lie. You only need to be truer than it. Truth walks on its own. Your job is to stop stepping in front of it. Thank you for listening to Roots of Glass on English Bridge. Thank you for learning the language of dignity with me. Some roots you are born with, others you choose to plant. May you plant yours where the light is kind and the soil is honest. And may you grow into the person who can welcome others across their own bridges with a voice that is gentle and strong, and yours.